What is happening, my good people? Greetings. How are you? How's it going? How's everybody doing out there? What is the latest and greatest? Hope everybody's well, feeling fantastic and excellent spirits, and I'm sure everybody is because we are now on the eve of the 2025 NFL season. Who would have thought? It seemed like 5 minutes ago, Philadelphia blew out Kansas City on that second Sunday of February, excuse me. And here we are now, almost 7 months later, to where the season will raise its curtain on the aforementioned Eagles in their home stadium at Lincoln Financial Field, where the Dallas Cowboys will come in without Micah Parsons, as we know, and see if they could hang and match wits and physicality and maybe even outscore the Eagles, which is probably going to be unlikely at this point. But welcome. If this is your first time, welcome aboard. And obviously, if this is more than your first rodeo, welcome back as we deliver the latest live stream every Wednesday. But today's a special one because this will predominantly be, at least in the first hour, hour 15, whatever it may be, talking about the NFL preview. Now, I'll touch on a couple of things on the back end of this, but I wanted to keep this football. I see a couple of comments already. I see a couple of people in the room, so I will get to those in a moment. In fact, I guess I'll put this out now. For those that have questions, for those that have follow-ups, responses, I always post in the room. So as I like to say, share your thoughts. So if you're on with me live, this is your chance to get at me, to ask any question you want, to debate whatever it is I'm going to say, as I certainly analyze from soup to nuts everything that could transpire over the course of, what is it now, 22 weeks starting tonight. And then we could post them in the chat room. I'll post them up on the screen, and we'll have a lot of fun. Away we go. And, of course, let's put the date up here, September the 3rd, 2025, as we are now into the ninth month of the year. And, of course, for those who are watching on the replay, you can still leave a comment. Don't feel as if because you're not here with us, that you can't ask a question, or maybe you didn't like anything that I said when it comes to sports, or in this particular case, football. So please leave a comment, feel free, and I'll be sure to get back to you. And before I even get started, why not? Let's jump right to it here with the comments. For starters, yes, my guy Brent from Canada. Welcome aboard as always, Brent. And of course, Cole, good morning. I wonder if Mrs. Cole's around, and if she is, good morning, or now good afternoon, I should say, because it's 12:03. And even if she's not around, I send my well wishes to her, Cole, so you know that. And hopefully everybody will start trickling in. The Val B's of the world, the Bios of the world. Maybe James D will show up. I don't know if Baseball Purist is going to show up to an NFL preview, although I'll talk baseball in the back end for a couple of minutes. But let's get it underway, the 2025 NFL preview. There is so much to uncover, so much to unpack. And the one thing, before I even get into predictions and things of that nature, I always like to go through the top storylines. And to me, there are 5 or 6 that I want to touch on. And I know I should probably pull up my notes here, because just as far as my bullet points are concerned, and then obviously I could go from there. Now, the first thing I wanted to get into is how many teams realistically, not win, can get to a Super Bowl. And how I looked at this was, in each conference, I figured there would probably be at least 3, but I've come with 4 in each conference. So to me, I think 8 teams can make the Super Bowl. Now, that's not to say that you could get a Cinderella or a team that comes out of nowhere to get to a Super Bowl. We've seen that many years, whether it was the Giants, and both of those years where they won the Super Bowl against the Patriots, they were a 4 and a 5 seed. And how they went through the postseason, got to the big dance, and won the whole thing. Now, of course, you can't predict that. You can't forecast that. So although there are special occasions, whether it's that or even the Steelers in 2005 as a 6 seed, the first team to ever be a 6 seed. Now, as we all know, with the additional wildcard team, now you have 7 teams that qualify for the playoffs. But back then, they were the first 6 seed to go on a run to win a Super Bowl. And I get it that you can't forecast or even think that there's a team out there, depending on where they fall in each conference, that could go to a Super Bowl. Obviously, when we get to that point in the middle of January, when we dissect and certainly analyze which teams that qualify, and we could take a look to see how many teams can make it to the Super Bowl at that juncture. But we're just getting started. So with me, how I look at it is the 8 teams right off the bat that I think can get to a Super Bowl. In the AFC, Buffalo, Baltimore, Kansas City, of course, as we know. And the other team I'm going to throw that hat into the ring are the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, I know the Bengals, defensively, you're going to say, Jay Reels, come on. Are you serious? The defense is Swiss cheese. They had to wait to pretty much the 11th hour to sign Trey Hendrickson, their pass rusher extraordinaire, to a contract in order for him to get there and make their defense a little bit decent. I understand. But when you have Joe Burrow as your quarterback, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and remember, now it's going to be 4 years ago where they actually went to a Super Bowl when they lost to the Rams. So they do know their way around winning. Now, I understand they haven't made it to the postseason over the last couple of years. I get that. But Burrow had a very good year last year, despite the fact them falling short. And I think they're going to get off to a better start this year, unlike years past where they've struggled right out of the gate. So I'm also going to include them based on their pedigree. And I understand that that's a little dicey because you're looking at a team that has not qualified or have been in the postseason these last couple of years. But I'm going to include them based on their offense, and they could outscore anybody, but I understand they got to stop people in the process. So you could debate whether or not Cincinnati belongs in that discussion. And then in the NFC, it's Philadelphia, it's Detroit, it's San Francisco, and the Rams. I did not include the Commanders there, as I'll get into when I break down the divisions. And maybe there's another team that you like in either one of those conferences. You may say, Jay Reels, what about Tampa? Tampa, Baker Mayfield, he's had good weapons. They've had some success. I understand last year they lost to Washington in the first round. But they did give Detroit all they could handle 2 years ago in the divisional round where, although they had to go the length of the field, they were down 31-23, but still, they gave the Lions a bit of a scare. And I'm sure there may be a team or two that we could discuss. And please, let me know. Put a comment. I'll post after I get through the storylines. But to me, those are the 8 teams. I don't think the Chargers, I don't think the Steelers, and I love the Steelers. And even though they pretty much loaded this year to go for it, and I'll preview my team at the back end, but for overall, I think those 8 teams legitimately can reach the Super Bowl. As far as who's going to get there and who will win, we'll discuss that at the back end of the preview overall. So that's my storyline number 1. Number 2, the Super Bowl hangover. Now, I understand you could say this every year for even any sport, NBA champion, World Series champion, Stanley Cup champ, etc. But it's interesting because when you look at Philadelphia and Kansas City, a lot of people think Philadelphia, as loaded as they are, they have a good shot to get back. And yeah, you could certainly discuss that, dispute it, argue it, etc. And Kansas City, we know they've been to 3 straight Super Bowls. And even though they're a team that is getting a little bit older, but their window is still there to get back and try to win another Super Bowl. But it's interesting because after this week, in week 2, I don't know if you checked the schedule or perused it, but they're going to face one another in Kansas City week 2. And that's not to say that this is going to be a revenge game for the Chiefs, or that's not to say that, this is an early Super Bowl preview or a post-Super Bowl matchup. And I'm sure these schedule makers were smart to know to put this game early on as opposed to midseason, because if you recall, 2 years ago, they played on a Monday night, Philadelphia and Kansas City, where Marquez Valdez-Scantling had a ball that he should have caught at the goal line, which would have won the game for the Chiefs, but he dropped it. The Eagles survived. And ironically, that was the game where the Eagles went 10 up and 1 down. And after that, they hit the skids to where they lost their last 6 games, including that postseason game in Tampa where they got blown out there in the wild card round, that Monday night game. But the reason why I bring up the hangover is because with Philly, and I'm sure tomorrow night they're going to raise another banner there at the link, and everybody's going to be in that festive, celebratory mood. And I'm sure with Dallas and all that they've had to endure, especially with the Micah Parsons deal just happening a week ago tomorrow, and how the after effects of that's going to be with the team as far as their confidence. And maybe if the Eagles come right out of the gate with a 10-0 first quarter lead, not to say that the Cowboys are going to pack it up, but it's going to be a thing where this is going to be a long night, so let's get on the plane and go back to Dallas. Who knows? But my point is that Philadelphia, you would think they're going to come out flying. Where Kansas City, they got to go to Sao Paulo to open up their season. And you guys know how I feel about those games that are being played down, whether overseas, Sao Paulo, doesn't matter. And you have to wonder whether or not that the travel for Kansas City, is that going to affect them to go down there? And I understand they're going to play 8 days later. But because of off the top of my head, it's got to be at least a 10-hour flight. And I understand they're flying private. They are not flying commercial. They have all the plush seats, amenities, Wi-Fi, you name it. But is that going to be a thing where it could affect that game when the two meet up in a post-Super Bowl rematch, or who knows if you want to even call it an early Super Bowl matchup? Way too early to tell that. But I think there's going to be some hangover on both sides. Philly, they've read all the press clippings. They know how great they are, so on and so forth. Do they get off to a slow start? And in Kansas City, because that first game in Sao Paulo, and then even though that's a home game where they'll face the Eagles, but who knows? If it's a situation where the Chiefs are 0-1, where the Chargers happen to win a game, could they go down 0-2? And that's where the hangover comes in. And I understand everybody has Chiefs fatigue. I certainly do. I'm tired of Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes. We all know about Travis Kelce. And now with the whole situation with Taylor Swift, you know that's going to be ratcheted up 1,000% when it comes to eyeballs to the sets and fans, quote unquote, watching these games. But I think you got to look out early season with these two teams, and especially with them matching up in week 2, how that's going to, I'd say, work itself out as time goes on when we get to the middle of the season, to when their buys are, and so on and so forth, because these teams always seem to get off to a sluggish start after a Super Bowl, and that's something to keep in mind. The third storyline, I think, when you look at the AFC, is Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and to a lesser extent, Joe Burrow. Can they take that next step? Now, we know Burrow has, and he beat Mahomes in Kansas City en route to a Super Bowl appearance before losing to the Rams. So that's why I say to a lesser degree. But we all know that the AFC does run through Kansas City, as we've seen here over the last few years. But for Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, two guys that certainly are just as formidable, maybe not better, but certainly are right there in the discussion as the top quarterbacks in the sport, along with Patrick Mahomes, but they can never seem to get past the Chiefs when the money's on the line, as we've seen there with Josh Allen last year, as we saw with Baltimore when they had the home game against Kansas City in the championship game, lose that game. And they could put up all the regular season MVPs. Josh Allen last year, Lamar Jackson 2 years ago, and Lamar Jackson in 2019. They could put up big-time numbers. They could put up 12-5, 13-4, 14-3 records. We've seen that. Been there, done that. We've watched that movie. But when it comes to them, whether it's playing against one another, as Lamar Jackson has not beaten Josh Allen head-to-head in the postseason, 0-2 against them. And as we've seen, Josh Allen to Patrick Mahomes. And I don't have a crystal ball to think that it's going to be another situation where Baltimore, Buffalo, and then the winner of that game is going to play Kansas City in a championship game. And it's ironic because Baltimore, in their first game, where did they go to start off their year? In Buffalo against the Bills and Josh Allen, which, mind you, is going to be the last regular season that the Bills will play in that ballpark at Orchard Park, which was formerly Rich Stadium, New Era Stadium, all these different names. But how I look at it is that if they're going to try to get the brass ring, get over that hump in the AFC and get to a Super Bowl and win the whole thing, because you could get there and that's fine, but you got to win. As I like to sing that old, what is that? I think it's Duke Ellington or maybe Cab Calloway. It don't mean a thing if you ain't got that swing, but of course take the swing out and put the ring in there, because you could get to as many Super Bowls. Ask Jim Kelly. Yeah, you could say that I've gone to 4 straight Super Bowls, but what did he come out away with? 0 rings. So if you're Lamar Jackson, who has been a 2-time MVP, Josh Allen now reigning MVP, and I'm sure they would trade that in a heartbeat for a Super Bowl ring. Can they get over the hump this year? To me, that is a big storyline. Now, the next one, this is for you, Cole. Are the Lions going to be able to get to the promised land? Now, we understand when you get there, you got to win. But the Lions have never been in the Super Bowl. In fact, the last time they won an NFL championship was 1957. That was long before you and I were born. And to think, I'm older than a lot of people in the room, if not older than everybody. So that just goes to show you where I'm at in my stage of my life. But when it comes to the Lions, we saw what happened 2 years ago. Dan Campbell, I know the riverboat gambler, the decisions that he made there, especially in that second half, going for it instead of kicking field goals. And then last year, I mean, what could you say? Did not execute. The Commanders went in there with house money, and they beat the brakes off of the Lions. I mean, what could you say? And I get it. They had a bunch of turnovers in the game, sloppy. We know what happened. Not to bring up bad memories to you, Cole, but and trust me, I see a lot of comments there. I'm going to get to each and every one of them. You know me here on a Wednesday live stream. You know how I do when it comes to sharing the floor with everybody. But when the Lions, even without their two coordinators, Ben Johnson in Chicago, Aaron Glenn in New York with the Jets, but they still have the coach and they still have the talent. And with Aiden Hutchinson coming back after the broken leg last year, and the defense should be a little bit better. We know about the offense fully loaded. Offensive line stocked. We know about Jared Goff. We know about David Montgomery, as well as Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon St. Brown, Sam Laporta, who's going to be healthy this year, Jameson Williams. I mean, that is a team that should get to a Super Bowl in their sleep. And I understand people in Philadelphia are going to be, what do you mean in their sleep? What about us? We're the reigning defending champs. Well, they didn't have to go to Detroit. And I understand that's how the cookie crumbled last year. But it would have been fascinating to see Philadelphia go into Detroit on that track to see how they would have stacked up against the Lions. We didn't see it happen. So therefore, much respect to the Eagles. But I'm sure Cole and everybody in the Detroit area are probably thinking, well, we're going to get our shot. And Detroit's going to play Philadelphia this year. Regular season, I get it. What is it going to mean in the grand scheme of things? Probably not much, but at least they will go up against one another as a precursor to maybe what could lie ahead in this NFL season. But for the Lions, can they finally get to their first ever Super Bowl? And for everything that I mentioned, talent, coaching, etc., it's all lined up for them. And a division that they did win by the hairs of their chinny chin chin last year because the Vikings were neck and neck. I don't expect the Vikings to be anywhere close to the top of the division. Green Bay, you could argue, but I still don't think so. Bears, to me, they're still a couple years away. That's why I think the Lions will be playing from in front, especially in the division. It's just a matter of where they fall because we all know you got to get the top seed in order to get a bye. That doesn't guarantee you a Super Bowl appearance. You want to have the playoffs come through your building throughout before getting to the big dance. But the Lions, it's all right in front of them. They could only hope to have another season like they did last year in the regular season so they could go back in the middle to the end of January and try to stamp their ticket to a Super Bowl. And to me, that's as fascinating as it gets, especially for that franchise who's never been there. And then two more things. Number one, I know with all the hoopla surrounding this Micah Parsons trade, and because it happened a week before the year started, just for this first year, all of a sudden, these Super Bowl odds for them went sky high. They went from being whatever it was, 40-1, now they're 25-1 or 20-1. I don't even know what the odds are because, you know me, I'm not a gambling man. Although I'm going to talk about over-unders later on, which I'll iron out and I'll explain why when we get to that point. H2O again. I was going to make a smoothie, but I just didn't have enough time with my setup and everything. But when it comes to the Packers and Micah Parsons, and I've talked about the deal, you know how I feel about it. And if you don't, if you're new here and I see the comments flooding big time, please ask the question. I'll be more than happy to answer. But because the spotlight's going to be on him as the highest paid non-quarterback in the league, and maybe people are going to think that he is the missing piece to the championship puzzle, I don't see it. But because he's getting paid the way he is, and because he is going to be asked at $47 million a year to deliver this team a deep playoff run. And that's not even including Super Bowl. Because as we've seen with the Packers these last couple of years, all right, they won in Dallas 2 years ago, and this is under Jordan Love. I'm not going to go back to the days of Aaron Rodgers. But 2 years ago, they lost to the 49ers in a game that you could argue that they should have won. And for Jordan Love to spit the bit in that fourth quarter, what was he, 5 of 9? He threw a couple of picks, one terrible. And I get it, it's his first playoff run after them beating Dallas the way they did. And then last year, just a snooze fest of a game in Philadelphia in that opening round, that wild card game, which was nondescript. It had no flow, and Love was just not good. And I believe he has ability. You can't deny that Jordan Love can play the position. But can he play it on a level against top-tier competition? Because, and I'm only basing it on the sample size that we've seen. And all you got to do is go back to last year. Their team lost what? They were 11-6 last year. And then they lost a playoff game. Out of those 6 losses, or out of those 7 losses, I should say, 6 of them came at the hands of only 3 teams. Who are those teams, you might add? The Vikings, who are ahead of them in the division. The Lions, who were obviously the top seed and won the NFC North. And the Eagles, not only in the first game that they played in Sao Paulo, but in the last game that they played in Philadelphia in the wild card. So those are the teams that he's going to have to go up against and beat. And I understand this isn't all squarely on Jordan Love. We know it's a team game, et cetera, yada, yada, yada. But we understand that quarterbacks are going to be graded by how they perform, especially in big games. And that's not to say he can't do it this year or maybe next year and beyond, but all I could grade it on is what I've seen, the eye test. Not the iPad with the analytics, not the iPad with the drawing plays and things of that nature. Eye test. So if people are going to think that, oh, Jordan Love, he's a top 7, 8 quarterback. All right, well, give me the games that you can actually say. And no, not against the Tennessee Titans. And no, not against the Bears. Or no, not against the Arizona Cardinals or the Carolina Panthers. No, I want to see him play against top teams. And how's he fared so far in his career as a starting quarterback? You know what the answer is to that. Do I even need to say any more? But with Micah Parsons there now as a guy that could be a game wrecker, but he's another one in big games. Does the man show up? In the 4 playoff games that he's played, Micah Parsons, in his career, can you guess how many sacks he has? 1. That's it. And I understand he can't get to the quarterback at every play. And I understand he's not a great run stuffer. And I get it that, oh, that's not his game. He's got to attack the quarterback. All right. And we understand he's in the top handful of players in the league that are great at what he does as far as rushing the quarterback. But if you have 1 quarterback sack in 4 games, let me put this in perspective as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. Do you remember back in the aughts, even into the early part of the 2010s, there was a rusher, and I know, Cole, you know this guy, Lamar Woodley. Do you know in the 8 playoff games that Lamar Woodley has played in, and I understand he had James Harrison on the other side, I get it. But you know what? Micah Parsons did have DeMarcus Lawrence, who is no slouch when it comes to rushing the quarterback. Lamar Woodley has registered a sack in each one of those 8 playoff games, including the biggest one where at 27-23, where the game was hanging in the balance at midfield, where they needed a touchdown, not a field goal, where in those final seconds, Lamar Woodley got the strip sack and they recovered the fumble at midfield with about 20 seconds to go for the Steelers to win Super Bowl 43. That's where you make your money. And again, in 8 playoff games, he's registered 1 sack in each of those games. And I get it. Not everybody is going to have that type of resume. Not everybody's going to get a sack a game. It's rare. It's actually almost unheard of. But nobody's calling Lamar Woodley's name as far as being one of the best pass rushers in the sport. Nobody's calling Lamar Woodley as being a Hall of Fame player or a former Defensive Player of the Year. Absolutely not. But guess what? The guy showed up in big moments, in big spots, and that was the biggest one that secured a championship. That is my point. So to get off the Packers thing, but I think that a lot of the early focus is going to be on what Green Bay does, and in particular, Micah Parsons. And then lastly, before I break down the divisions, and before I get to the divisions, I'm going to go through all the comments, I promise. As far as, and I kind of hate to say this because you know me, I got to throw cold water, but when does it get to a point in the NFL season, and maybe for some it's never, but when do you get NFL fatigue? And what I mean by that is because if you've listened to me in the past, especially on the podcast, Maybe not so much on a live stream because now with the NFL getting ready to raise its curtain, obviously I'm going to unpack a lot of NFL. But when does it get to a point where enough is enough? Because as it is, it's opening week, so you kind of, all right, you let it slide. You don't matter because you want to get into anything and everything that happens with the National Football League. But because of the games on Thursday, which aren't great games historically, let's face it. Yeah, we look forward to the Thursday night Amazon Prime game because it's something to watch. It kind of leads into the weekend, gets you prepped up for the games over the course of the more so Sunday and Monday night. But then as you get deeper to the year, especially when college football starts to quiet down, you have your Black Friday game. You have the games on Saturday. You have the doubleheader Monday night games, which I can't stand. You have the the Sunday overseas, the international games. You have all this where it's like the schedule gets worn thin because you have so many mouths to feed. You got to feed Amazon. You got to feed Peacock. You got to feed CBS, Fox, NBC, ABC, ESPN. Think about it. The Monday night game, and I understand they're putting it early because they are division rivals, and you don't want to see this game in week 14. But your Monday night game is Vikings-Bears. And I understand that the Sunday night game is the highlight game because it's on network TV, and Sunday night was what Monday night used to be. But are you going to get geeked up over Vikings-Bears after you watched tomorrow night, Friday night, all day Saturday, Sunday night, and then your Monday night game is Vikings-Bears? I already have fatigue talking about it. And listen, I love the NFL. I go back to the mid-'70s with the NFL. And I get it that it evolves with anything else in life. With us as individuals, as we evolve to try to get better, be more creative, adventurous as we get deeper into our old age. Same with all these sports. When it comes to rule changes or scheduling or things, I get it. But the NFL, it's eating themselves up as a whole. And I understand I'm in the small minority and maybe a strong minority, but a small one, because they think that, well, hey, it's all about ratings. It's all about money, which it is. I get it. It's capitalistic on their part. But at the same time, as I said, when is enough enough? Now, of course, I watch, I follow. I can't divorce myself from something I've watched for almost a half a century. But it's a thing where when you see all these games and you don't know on which streaming device or streaming platform or network or whatever, after a while, it just makes your head spin. At least for me, it does. And who knows? Will it be week 6? Will it be week 7? The 3 games on Thanksgiving? The games on Christmas, which swallows up the NBA? I mean, and I understand I'm throwing cold water on this, so let me take a seat back. Let me get to the comments. I see 28 comments there, which I love, and I thank you guys and gals for that. So let's get to it. All right, let's see what we got from the start. Oh, I got to scroll all the way up here. All right, here we go. Ready? All right, Cole has this. I know this has nothing to do with the NFL. I just want to hear your input. Ohio State had a mole at Michigan. Did they really? At Michigan. So wait, there was somebody at Ohio State that was at the Michigan game this past week against New Mexico that was sign stealing? Now, I know I got to scroll all the way back down to get to that. Let me see. Maybe Cole's put that in there. Oh, crap. All right, Cole, I'll make sure. I'll look out for that answer. I did not hear about that, A. B, if that is the case, and again, Ohio State had a mole at Michigan. Yeah, I mean, Ohio State shouldn't do that. I mean, if they're trying to go tit for tat, if that's the case, I mean, that's a terrible job by them. They should know better. They should be better. I mean, they're defending champs. And if that's the case, then obviously there's going to be a lot of speculation on, is their championship legit? All right, Cole, let me see. Wait. And no Miss Cole today. Next to me, Miss Cole watches as a teenager. Understood. Understood. As a matter of fact, I'm sure didn't have school today. What? Didn't have school? I tell you, when I was a kid, it's like you got your vacation days and that was it. It's not like, you got a half day here, off day here. And you're in Michigan where it snows a hell of a lot more than New York, especially in my part of New York. If you're in Buffalo, different story. But, and again, I'm aging myself and I go back 1,000 years. There had to be 8 inches of snow on the ground before they even closed school, let alone had delays. Now you get a dusting and they're closing schools. So I feel like, hey, not that I should get any money or any vacation time because obviously I'm not working. I mean, this is my job. But yeah, to me, I'm bitter about that. And I understand, get over it, whatever. But Bio, my guy, of course, Brent, love it. Love the camaraderie here in the room as always. Bengals have a schedule like the Lions this year, brutal. Well, it's interesting, Cole, because I was looking at that and their schedule is tricky, but I think that they're going to go to a better start this year. I mean, have the Browns that are go to Cleveland. I get that. But at the same time, I really feel that with the last 2 years, and I don't know about the coach, Zach Taylor, but I think the quarterback, he's the guy that he's the straw that stirs the drink there. And I'm sure he's probably told his team, guys, we haven't made the playoffs the last 2 years. We were this close. Last year, they beat the Steelers on that Saturday night game where, of course, they fell the game short because the Steelers they were able to get in. But I really feel that Burrow's going to have a chip on his shoulder, knowing that with all the yards that he threw last year, and remember, 2 years ago, he had that bad thumb. He missed the last 6 games. So I know tough schedule, and I know that defense is certainly a giant question mark. But I really have a feeling they're going to have a big year this year. Now, I'm not saying they're going to go to a Super Bowl. I say that if they get in and they get hot, nobody's going to want to play them. So, and let me see. Let me pull up their schedule real quick now that you bring it up. Of course, they have the Browns. Here we go. The following week, Jacksonville, at the Vikings, at the Broncos. Then the Lions go to Cincinnati. Packers, at Packers. Steelers, Jets, at Bears. Steelers, Patriots. You know, the schedule isn't terrible. I mean, look what they close the season out with. All right, they host the Ravens. Though they go to their final 6 games. 3 are up because they play at Ravens, at Buffalo, and then they host the Ravens. But then at Miami, and then home to the Cardinals and Browns. I mean, those are 3 cupcakes. So, yeah, they have some stretches that are tough, but it's not impossible. So, let's see how they and you know what, James D., you're right. I think the Giants could surprise people, but here's the problem with that. The start of their schedule is brutal. Washington, at Dallas. All right, maybe you know Micah Parsons, and who knows. Now, if Dallas gets embarrassed tomorrow night and lose 38-3, I'd be skeptical. And then they play the Chiefs and then the Chargers after that. And not to say the Chargers are world beaters, but they could start off 0-3 and maybe 0-4. But then their schedule lightens up a little bit, so that I agree. Brent saying what's up to James and vice versa. I love the camaraderie, as I said, all's well. All right, now Brent says here, if Jacksonville played every game across any pond, be undefeated, yeah. I think Trevor Lawrence and the boys have a better season this year. Now, they have a new coach, Liam Cohen. I don't know about the excitement regarding Travis Hunter. Is that going to be enough in Jacksonville? Now, they've been a massive disappointment. And even Trevor Lawrence has been a massive disappointment. This guy in college, coming out of Clemson, was going to be projected to be as close to a can't-miss quarterback as we've seen. And we saw him win a national championship. And that doesn't automatically mean because you win a national championship that you're going to have success in the NFL. We can name countless quarterbacks that have done that and have not cut the mustard in the league. But here's a guy with all of his arm strength, his size, et cetera, and his pedigree in college that he was supposed to resuscitate an organization that has been dormant forever. Mind you, they had that 1 year, 2017, where they went to an AFC title game under Doug Marrone, and Blake Bortles was the quarterback. But for Jacksonville, to me, this is a big year for them. Not to say they got to go to the playoffs or whatever, but remember, 2 years ago, they made it. No, 3 years ago, they made it to the postseason and did well. They came back 27-0 from the Chiefs and from the Chargers. And then they hung well with the Chiefs there in the divisional round. Then they didn't make the playoffs after losing the last 3 games, spit the bit, and then last year, up in smoke. So now, with a new coach, the former offensive coordinator from the Buccaneers, who's supposed to be a good offensive mind, well, let's see how that offense is going to fare in Jacksonville with that coach and in the division that I get it, Houston. But if Jacksonville could play the way they did 3 years ago, they could be neck and neck with them because that division is soft, as you know. So Jacksonville, I got to see it. But would I be shocked? I can't say I'd be shocked if they play well, but I have a feeling that they're not. So we'll have to wait and see. Brent, lifelong Bills fan, not a Josh Allen fan. Really? Scatterbrain. Wow. Well, I think he does at times take chances where he could be a little Brett Favre-ish, but you got to like what you see. I mean, his ability is through the roof. And, yeah, every now and again you got to question some of the throws he makes, but wow, that's interesting. That's a good take by you, Brent, to think that you're a lifelong Bills fan, and even though you're not a fan of his, that's like me being, as a Met fan, and I think I may have said this before, David Wright, homegrown, has a lot of the Met records. I was never a huge David Wright fan. I liked him. I can't say I even loved him. So I guess I kind of feel the way I did for David Wright, the way you do for Josh Allen. And the reason why David Wright is because I thought, as talented as he was, but he needed to have, he's not a guy that's going to carry your offense. And that's why I didn't love him. When you look at those early years of David Wright, and James D's a Met fan, he could attest to this. When you look at David Wright, 06, 07, I'm getting off the beaten path. I promise I'll be 60 seconds. Look at David Wright's numbers, 06, 07, 08, when he had Carlos Beltran, Carlos Delgado, to a lesser degree, Moises Alou, because he was on the team 07, 08. He had big numbers. One year he batted 324. I think it was 33-124. After that, when they moved to Citi Field, he had good numbers, not great numbers. Look at those numbers from 08 prior when he played at Shea Stadium than when he played at Citi Field. And I understand he got beamed in the head and then the spinal stenosis and his career trajectory went south. But he needed to have guys in the lineup that supported him as opposed to him being the guy in the lineup. That's why I didn't love David Wright. Cole, yeah, he definitely did. And that was a disaster of a signing. What did he play? 10 games before he was gone? Cole, sorry if Jacksonville's your team, but I was so happy when he left Ohio State as a diehard Michigan fan. Yeah. Everyone will ever left to Michigan. No, I agree. Urban Meyer in the coaching ranks collegiately is, yeah, I mean, can't argue. Tops. At least he got 4 in a row. How many can say that? You know, you're right, Brent. I get it that Jim Kelly, he could actually say that, but he was a Scott Norwood wide right. If they would have won that Super Bowl and lost the other 3, at least they would have had that one. And you could even argue that that was the one out of the 4 that they should have won. The Giants, I'm not going to say they had no business winning, but we all know they were superior to the Giants. But they controlled the clock. Otis Anderson, who was your Super Bowl MVP, they had the ball over 40 minutes. And just to think, the Bills had the ball, granted that they got a safety right before the half. But you want to say technically, they had the ball 19 minutes and they scored 19 points. So imagine if it was, even if the Giants had the ball for 35 minutes, Buffalo probably would have scored 28. Or at least 24, and that would have won the game. So, and again, you can't go back revisionist history, but that's how lethal that Bill offense was. Because in the other 3 games, they didn't show up. They were a disaster. The second Cowboy game, they were what? I think they were up 13-6 at the half, but they did not play well. They were sloppy, and then Thurman Thomas fumbles the ball, James Washington, and that was the game. Brent, yes. Just, you like Trevor Lawrence, right? Because you mentioned Buffalo Bill fan. Detroit is scary. I picked them for the Super Bowl. It's time for them to get there. James, I cannot disagree with you on that. 100%. Cole, I live in Michigan, Lions fan. I don't see it happening. Oh, no, Cole. Lions defense scares me still. Yeah, if there is an Achilles, it's that. I'd have to say, Brent, Dan Campbell has to understand that every time you go for a 4th down could be. And that was the problem in the championship game 2 years ago. And Cole, I'm sure you could agree with that. And here's the irony. When right before the half, Detroit, San Francisco, NFC championship game, he had the ball with 4 seconds to go, and I believe it was a 3rd and goal. And you would have thought, does he go for this here? He kicked the field goal. They made it 24-7. All right, take the points. I could see him going for it the first time, and I believe it was a 4th and 2 where I think it was Josh Reynolds. He dropped the ball, And it was a pass that he could have caught. Go for it there? All right, fine. That I'll give you. The second time, to not try to kick a field goal there, to me, was inexcusable. You want to go for it the first time? All right, fine. He didn't make it. And I believe that was the play where, made the catch, if I'm not mistaken. Was that the bomb? No, that was after the second miss, now that I think about it. Because then, when they had the second miss, and I believe the game was 24-17 or 24-21? I can't remember the score off the top of my head. But that was when Brandon Ayuk caught the ball off of his helmet, and he was down at the 1 yard line, which that was the biggest play right there because that just turned everything. Because they missed the field goal, and then Ayuk gets the ball off his helmet, and then they punch it in. And I believe that could have tied the game, and they may have taken the lead at that point. And that's where he could have kicked the field goal. You kick the field goal, I think they would have been up by 10, stabilize the game, have Detroit go to length of the field as opposed to getting the ball at whatever it was, the 45-yard line, and then the next play, boom, and to me, that was it. Brent, I agree, James D. There are going to be some surprises. Just the Giants. I think, and their defense is going to be stellar. Now, the schedule is going to be rough at the start, though. Cole, the Blue and Maize. I don't trust Goff in a big game until he proves it to me. I can't believe it. Now, listen, Goff took the Rams to a Super Bowl, and Goff last year, no good against Washington. And I don't put that at the feet of Goff in the game 2 years ago in the championship game. I don't. To me, that was on Dan Campbell. Campbell should have went for it there. He kicked a field goal, like I mentioned, right at the end of the half. I mean, I understand he's a guy that's going to take chances. He's going to roll the dice, etc. And to me, if you really wanted to roll the dice, you could have done that in the first half where it's like, no, I want to get that into the end zone to make it 28-7 to try to put this game out of reach. But he took the field goal, which was the smarter thing to do. But you can't go back-to-back in the third quarter and do that. To me, So I don't blame Goff for that. I get your concerns. But Goff is a good quarterback, and he's in a good system. And I understand he's only as good as his last game, and the last game was against Washington, was a stinker. But I think I trust him maybe a little bit too more than you do for whatever the reason. No, for the reasons that I've mentioned. I think he's a guy that's capable. I really do. Unless they're incredible matchups on Thursday, Monday, Sunday. So exactly, Brent. And that's why the NFL was special. The NFL, you had like 9 or 10 1 o'clock games. Then you had the 4 afternoon games and the Sunday night game and a Monday. And that's it. Do your math. And, of course, you have the buys, too. You got to factor those in. I hate when you have 2 or 3 4 o'clock games or 4:25 games. All right, you're going to have your marquee game, but then what are the other games? Chicago at Arizona, and then Tennessee at Denver. Those games are awful. And I don't want to hear, my fantasy team. I don't care about that. I want good games. And I understand not every game is going to be great. I get that. But this is what happens when you have all these platforms and all these channels where Thursday, Friday. I mean, think about this. And it's going back last year, so I get it. Whether you're aware or not, do you know the Kansas City Chiefs played on every day last year except Tuesday because there were no games on Tuesday? And you know the NFL, which I read today, that the executive director who filled in for Lloyd Howell, who was out there on strip clubs and things of that nature with under-the-table deals, now the player exec or the executive director for the players, David White, said that an 18-game season is not a slam dunk, which I like. It's bad enough it's 17 because it's just off kilter. That's like a baseball season of 163 games and an NBA season of 83 games. Nonsense. We all know it's all about this. But 17 games, I hate it. And again, it's all about money. It's all about ratings. The NFL, as I've said before, and I'll say it a million times over, you can have Carolina and Jacksonville in the Super Bowl play Wednesday at 3 in the morning on the moon. And they can have it on the cooking channel. And guess what? 100 million people are going to watch. So, yes, we understand the NFL is bulletproof. They swallow up anything that's on TV. As evidence, prior to last year, before the NFL season, did you know that out of the 100 top watched TV shows of 2023, do you know that 92 of them were NFL games? Look it up. 92. So I don't want to hear, oh, we got to show them. No nonsense. You can draw flies to watch Carolina Jacksonville. But then again, you're going to have 100 million people to watch. That's why. When does it enough? When do you become oversaturated with just too much football? Because believe it or not, even too much football is too much. And I get it. I'm in that small minority, but call me crazy. All right, let me see. James, it's getting too much. Exactly. And again, the Chiefs, I'll break it down. Obviously, they played Sunday night. They played Monday night. They played Thursday night. They played the Black Friday game. That's 4. They played Wednesday on Christmas against the Steelers. They played Saturday, the week before the Christmas Day games, against when they played Pittsburgh, because they had to break down the schedule or break up the schedule that way. And they played Houston that Saturday. So you got Saturday, take it back. They played it Thursday. As we all know, they opened the season in Kansas City last year after winning the Super Bowl. And that was against Baltimore. Thursday, Black Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Wednesday. Again, when does it stop? Cole, Brendan, my opinion, Saturday is football day. Sunday is just a bonus because of college. Absolutely. All right, here we go. Ohio State sent a player to Michigan. That player ended up transferring to Ohio State. Told Ohio State about Stallions. Now they're saying Ryan Day has... okay. Now, listen. Obviously, that's not right if that's the case. And who knows? Because of transfer portals and all this other nonsense. I mean, when you're talking about big schools like that, how do you police that? It's difficult. Now, of course, it has to be overwhelming evidence in order for, let's say, this particular scenario to iron out. But you also got to think that there's no way to try to police that. You can't say, oh, wait a minute, this guy's going. And, of course, if it's a thing where Ohio State sent the player to Michigan, how did that unfold? Because I'm sure that if you play at Ohio State, even if you're the 53rd man on the roster, are you really going to go to Michigan? I'm sure it's going to be almost a sin to do that where you're going to transfer, and who knows? I don't know if it could be blocked. That's a tricky one, Cole, but yeah, it's certainly debatable. It's certainly one to bring up and to discuss. All right, now let me get through more of these because obviously I got to get to my divisions. I got so much to get to here, and I certainly want to acknowledge all of your comments. Understood, Cole, speaking from an NFL standpoint. Yes, going back. Look who's here, John Beaumont. It's my old boss. To your point, the NFL diluting the fan base by playing games on every single, I love how you put that, John, media venue has driven me away from watching. It's easier to watch online with updates. I couldn't have said that better myself. And, John, thank you for so much for hopping on board. I really appreciate that. And I got to pay a visit. This is my old boss when I left corporate America to do this full time. And he's a great sport. He's a good sports fan, too. And he's a Texan fan, which we'll get to them later. But first off, John, thank you for so much. And you know what? This is how I feel. The NFL isn't special. It isn't the way it once was, where you look forward to Sunday, watching all day, and then the Monday night game, and that's it. I'm sure there's been plenty of breakups, divorces, etc., because of games on all these days. Could you imagine? Honey, I can't go shop with you on Black Friday because I got to watch Chiefs Raiders. Or, yeah, it's Thanksgiving, it's a tradition, but then the wife says, all right, enough football. But, hun, there's the 8 o'clock game. 8 o'clock? Didn't you not watch enough football at 1 and at 4? Now, again, you see all the memes, you see all the videos on social media. Hey, I'm putting in my 2 weeks notice. I saw one of those where the boyfriend or the husband gives it to the wife 2 weeks notice because here it is, starting September the 7th, I will be unavailable to do this, that, the third on any family function, gathering, shopping, etc. from now until Super Bowl Sunday. But now they hijack your Mondays, they hijack your Saturdays in December, they hijack your holidays, Christmas too. I mean, it's just too much. And that's just me. I've been a Lions fan my whole life, and that's been hard. No, it has. I feel you. Until it hurts the bottom line, I think they're looking at expansion. I know, and that's the worst part. Why are they going global? Why? Are people playing football in Brazil? We know football is soccer, and that's the true essence of football. Nobody cares about the NFL there in Sao Paulo. Nobody. Or Berlin. London, I'll say yes, because it's been there now for 15 years, maybe more than that because of Jacksonville. So maybe there's some interest there. But I don't want to hear all these other players. Oh, they're going to go to Australia. No, nonsense. NBA, I can understand because there are basketball players from everywhere. Even to NHL. They want to play in the Czech Republic. They want to play wherever. I don't care. Finland. That's fine. Baseball, all right, they go to Japan, but there's a Japanese contingent and obviously interest there. Do I even need to unpack that? As well as if they're going to play in the Dominican Republic, which they don't, or Mexico, which they have in the past. If they want to play in London, I know London say, all right, fine, I don't like that, but all right, I get it. Or they're going to play in Korea, I get it, because there's fans over there. And they usually play before the start of the season, which you can accept. But this nonsense of these games, 9:30 in the morning on the East, I can imagine Cole's got to wake up at 6:30 if the Rams are going to play in London. It's just, John, I'm with you 1,000%. Good point, John. My understanding was the Big Four majors at least spoke, and I don't know if there's a continuation to that. Yeah, if the Giants can survive the first half of the season, yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Cole, it's about money and sports now, period. That's it. That's all there is. I'm sorry, Jerry Jones's great-grandkids can't even spend a fraction of what he's made in the NFL. Cannot. And that's what it is. It's all about money. And that's the thing that's even more troublesome because, one more time, as I said a little while ago, if the Cooking Channel came out and scrounged every penny that they could find under seat cushions, maybe if a penny fell through the stove or a dollar that was about to be burnt on the top of the stove, and they went to the NFL and said, hey, if you could put games on Tuesday night, we'll be more than happy to broadcast the game for you. Now, I understand it's going to be $2 billion, but can you do it? The owners will run to the Players Association to say, hey, we got to have games on Tuesday now. They won't look at that and say, no, we can't do that. We have games everywhere. No. They're going to say the Cooking Channel is going to give us $2 billion to broadcast games? What? Please. You're on top of it, Cole. I love it. Just a continuation. It's not sports anymore. It's how to generate as much money as possible. I know, and that's the thing where, listen, if I was a sports fan that just started watching sports 3 years ago and you start connecting the dots and you see what's going on, I'd probably jump to something else. And I get it. We could talk about, I love music. I'm a big music fan. And I want to go see Taylor Swift, or I'm just using her. But it doesn't matter. It could be Bruce Springsteen. It could be any with it. I want to get tickets. How much are the tickets? $400. $400? I understand NFL games aren't cheap and so on and so forth, but it doesn't matter. Entertainment is going to swallow you up whole. Just like I sent that video, and I even posted it. I was more sports media broken, but there's another video that I connected that maybe I'll even, you know what? I'm going to critique that too. And I probably should have critiqued it already about how the sports fans priced out. And the only way that we could speak is if we don't go to the games. Or, you steal passwords from other people to watch games on Netflix or on Prime or whatever it is. I mean, that's where you're going to get them. But the NFL is a juggernaut. City Field kill right. The fences are too far. Yeah, he's not that. He's a line drive hitter. I totally agree. John, which I get. These guys can get hurt, and it's over one play. The side effect is that I can't take my kids to these games because, and that's it. I mean, the parking itself, like you said, John, how is parking $40? 40. Maybe it's 50 by now. Oh, how are we going to pay these players? And I got news for you. MetLife Stadium, which opened in 2010, 15 years ago, has to be one of the worst new stadiums out there. And I've been there not only to watch football, I've been there to watch a hockey game. And I have that on a vlog on my YouTube channel. You just got to go back in the archives and check that out. And it's actually pretty entertaining. It's about 8.5 minutes. If you want to have some fun, a few laughs, I don't record the actual game itself. You just see my reactions, etc. As an Islander fan against the Rangers, I can't stand. I hate the Rangers. I digress. But that stadium is an atrocity. It's just a slab of concrete and metal, and the inside there's no charm, there's no feel. It is just awful. And Woody Johnson, who's one of the worst owners in sports, I got to throw that out there. He should have built a stadium across from Citi Field, where they're building a soccer stadium for the New York City Football Club, where that would have been the perfect area because you bring a football team back to New York, not New Jersey. They played where the Jets originally played, literally right across the street at Shea Stadium, which the Shea Stadium vlog's coming at you in the next couple of weeks for sure. Keep your fingers on the dial on the channel there. And would have at least had a semblance of a team playing in New York. Instead, you play 6 miles out in East Rutherford in the swamps in a stadium that is just antiseptic. Oh, it's just, it's. I don't even know what I'm doing here. I'm clicking things I don't even. All right. Yeah, so John, I feel you 1,000%. I mean, it's just, it's out of control. It's all about generating money streams from whatever available source at the current moment. You hit it right on the head, Brent. I cannot say it any better than that. As a Lions fan, I don't mind Dan going for it all the time if he didn't drop those passes 49ers. Yeah, I know the Josh Reynolds one. I get it. And I was on a 4th and 2, which I get. I think the second one may have been a 4th and 6. Off the top of my head, which, come on, 4th and 6, you got to kick a field goal. And I think that was at the 33-yard line because, remember, 33, they set up for a 48-yarder. No, I forgot where it was because I remember that pass play to Brandon Ayuk was about a 55-yard pass play. So we would have Ray Finkel. There would be a pet detective. Yeah, exactly. Going back to the Ace Ventura movies, 100%. All right, it's almost 1 o'clock. All right, so I'm going to get back to these comments. 1 o'clock, I got to continue because if not, I will be. And listen, I don't mind if I'll be here forever, but the thing is, I have an appointment at 2 o'clock, unfortunately, and I could pick this up from where I left off, but I want to kind of keep this in that 2-hour time frame. So, all right, Brent, we were in Toronto. James Twins last Monday. Yes, Canadian dollar. $4 alcohol drinks. Wow. Yeah. And, of course, with all the renovations in their ballpark and they're in first place, you already know how that goes. Val, welcome aboard, my friend. Go Niners, of course. Everybody saying hello to Val, which is good. Val's always a mainstay here in the room. Yep, Giants, your baseball team got the win. They played well. Yep, Rockies, and we saw almost the brouhaha that took place. Price is driving people. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Listen, John, you can't. Yeah, little brouhaha. John, listen, spot on. Giants won 100 losses for the Rockies. At least they won't actually having a better year than we thought. I thought they weren't going to win 30 games, and they've won, I think, 32. Off the top of my head, thank you so much, Val. You know that. Brent, yes. I'm gonna critique that video, and I'm gonna critique it on the good side because June Lee, who I did that Sports Media is Broken video that I posted, I think, about a couple weeks ago, he talks about how the sports fan is priced out and how we could actually get back at them, which I kind of like. And he puts out good content. And I know Pablo Torre also puts out good content too. And today he's trying to expose Steve Ballmer, Kawhi Leonard in that scenario, which George Kittle, yep, that's your guy. Every sport, wait a year. And my cousin's a big time, she's a pickleball instructor, and she's trying to get me to play, which I think I want to get into. But yeah, 100%. Pickleball will be infiltrated, and you never know. That could be a situation where, no shade on Campbell and the Lions. My daughter feels being on the Lions. It's just moderation is the key, as we know. Val saying what's up to Brent. Jay, you hit on the head. These platforms are going to tell the NFL they need more as those games. Yeah. And listen, I'm sure, and I'm not saying this out of school, there are live streams for free out there. You can watch these games. I'm just going to keep it at that. And I'm not saying that nobody knows that. And I'm not trying to expose or trying to steer you in certain directions. But if you really want to stick it to the NFL, but we get it. The NFL still makes a gross amount of money. Do I even have to tell you that? Brent, you finish up there. Oh, that's a good one. Cole. And that's a good one too, Brent. I'll be curious to know if you fish up there. I think he does. I want to say, I don't know. I'm sure Brent's probably answered that at this point. You're right, John. I tried to explain. Yeah. And that's the thing too with these sporting events, especially a Met game, there's distractions every 5 seconds. They got to put, the stadium race on the board. We got to put this. We got to put that. They play music after every pitch to kind of get the mood. That's too much. We're there for a ball game. I understand it's entertainment. I understand I got to make money, but I don't need to be sensory overload with having to watch the scoreboard or having to hear songs being played in between every pitch or All right, let's get the noise meter going. Stadium was still a cool threat. No, it is. It's just very expensive, and it is. It's too much. It's out of control. Wait, did I miss this, Jay? Oh, no, James, you hit on the head. No, I did put that up there. All right, I don't want to miss any of these comments here. Stadium is still, very expensive one to boot. Oh, it just turned 1 o'clock, so I'm going to get back to these comments in a moment. Hey, Cole, sorry, man, no fish. Oh, but yeah. It's all right. So Cole doesn't fish. Val B. Verlander, yes, he did. 121 pitches in 5 innings. Brent used to go to Canada. Muskie fishing, haven't done so in a long time. Yes, Tigers Mets about to start. Let's see if the Mets could sweep. I'll hold my breath on that. Although Jonah Tong is pitching today, so we'll see. Mets life is a joke. They have the Maras and the Johnsons, both billionaires, don't want to pay. I know. It's just disgraceful. Hey, Cole, we have a home in northwestern Ontario. Apparently, every puddle of body pull out pickerel. Oh, look at that. Interesting. I'm getting a text here. All right, and of course, Cole talking about that. All right, so I'm going to get back to Cole with the walleye tournaments. Yes, Cole's doing a killing on that. Does that professionally. Give it up to him. I appreciate that. Went out a few years ago. I love it. All right, so I'm going to get back to that. John, I see you got the comment there. I'm going to see if I can just highlight there and go back because let me get back to what you're here for, my NFL breakdown. Now, divisions. Let's go right through it. I'm not going to skim through it, because, of course, I want to get to the other things. I may not get to baseball and some of the other stuff because I want to keep this in a tidy 2 hours. But here we go. I'm going to start with the AFC East to go down. I'm going to save the Steelers for last as a Steeler fan to do their preview for those out there who love the Steelers. All right, AFC East, this is the Buffalo's division to lose. They're going to have a big year, not probably. They're going to have a big year. Josh Allen, they're gearing up, knowing it's the last year in that building. I think that's important to them, which I know may sound kind of weird because now they're going to move into a new building next year with an overhang and all the pomp and circumstance, where if you go to that stadium in Buffalo now, you have your scoreboard and they may pump it through music and the loud horn that they do, but that's it. Where now they're going to have all these fan experiences. Bills Mafia, they're going to try to ratchet it up. I'm sure they're going to have a Bills Mafia section there in the stadium. So, it's just going to be out of bounds, but that's next year. Bills going to have a big year, I think. Dolphins, that Tyreek Hill situation, I know he mended fences there where he felt like he wanted out. He had enough. This is the last time you see me in Miami. And they're a good offensive team, but defensively, and they've lost a lot of players in free agency. So I don't think they're going to have a big year. And Tua's health is always a big question mark. The Patriots, did you see their number in Vegas? Their number. I understand Mike Vrabel. I understand the schedule isn't that difficult. Drake May's second year. All right, show him promise. Stephon Diggs. How long before he starts throwing his helmet and starts griping? Because we know he's a bit of a diva. And although defensively, all right, they're going to be good, but are they going to be great? As we've seen years past under Bill Belichick. I don't know, and I'll say this right now, I don't think so. The Jets, Aaron Glenn, there's going to be a lot of growing pains here. Justin Fields, I like as a quarterback. I don't love him. I like him. They're simplifying the offense way too much for him. If you saw in the preseason, everything is dump-offs. I get it, that they're not going to stretch the field, and it's going to be Air Coryell the days of the Chargers back in the late 70s, early 80s. But they got to come up with a better offensive game plan. Not every game is going to be 16-13, 17-13, 13-10. That's how the Jets are going to win. But I don't think that's going to be the case. But the Jets are going to be granted. If they win 5-6 games, you have to take it if you're a Jet fan. You're not going to like it, but I see a long year there for the Jets. The AFC North, arguably the best division. Ravens, I think they're going to have a huge year. I hate to say that with every fiber of my being. Lamar Jackson, we talked about that as one of the storylines. Same for Josh Allen, taking that leap. What is he going to do? Jackson, as we know, in big games. No, not in October, November, and early December. Late December, January in particular. He has come up small. Last year, people could say, well, Mark Andrews dropped the two-point conversion. But, he did have a terrible interception in the first half, which led to a field goal. And he had the fumble that was returned all the way to the inside the 10 where they punched it in for a touchdown. I understand you can't take those away. And even though he gutted his team at 27-20 to get the touchdown. He needed a two-point conversion, but his mistakes in the first half cost him. So the next big playoff game, and I'm not talking about a wild card game or even a divisional round game 2 years ago beating Houston. No, I want to see him beat the big wigs. I want to see him beat the big teams. The next huge playoff game that Lamar Jackson wins will be his first. Or I should reverse that. His first big playoff game will be his first. So we'll see what happens there. Bengals, I think they get off to a quick start. Their schedule is favorable, but their defense is a big question mark. Unless Trey Hendrickson is going to be a defensive player of the year, he's going to get 21 sacks. And even he can't do it all by his own. But I think the Bengals, unlike the last couple of years where they lost to Denver on opening day and they lost, who did they lose to last year? New England. Inexcusable. And Denver was a couple of years ago. No, I lost to the Browns 2 years ago. And last year they lost to New England in their opener. Denver was, I think, even further back. So you got that. The Browns, they're going to have a long year. I know the Shadura watch is going to be on, even though he's the third string. I understand they got very good defensive players. Denzel Ward, Myles Garrett, as we know, et cetera. But that offense, Joe Flacco, how long before he passes the torch to the younger guys? That's the story. Pittsburgh, I'll get to in a minute. The AFC South, the Texans, they're going to be the de facto division winner unless Jacksonville could be that team as we talked about. Houston, third year with DeMeco Ryans and C.J. Stroud. I like them. I don't love them because their ceiling is a divisional round. They don't seem to have what it takes. And I understand last year they lose Tank Dell. They had no Stephon Diggs. Nico Collins, a very good receiver. They're not going to have Joe Mixon the first 4 games. But I think, just like the Bills, it's their division to lose. Do you believe in Indianapolis? I don't believe in Daniel Jones, although he's shown some flashes. But is he going to be a guy that's going to be 11-5, 11-6 and win a division? I think not. There's no way Tennessee, under Cam Ward in his first year, they're going to do anything. So really, it's going to be between, in my eyes, Houston and Jacksonville. Maybe Indy could surprise. But I don't think they're going to be anything close to a division winner. So Jacksonville, where do they stand? And that's why I think it's a big year. Weak division, their schedule isn't terrible, but can they hang and be in the mix there for division? Because I don't think they're going to be in the mix for a wild card. That's just me. So how the improvements for Jacksonville this year are going to be enormous in order for them to get themselves back to win a division and try to overtake the Texans. But the Texans, to me, wild card, they'll probably win their game because it's in their building, and then they have to go on the road, whether to Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, and they're going to lose. And that's all they've shown throughout the course, not only just these last couple of years, but in their franchise's history. So that's just and I understand that's a shortcut there when I break it down, because really, you can't expect Tennessee to do anything big under Cam Ward in his first year. Only going to win 5 games. And Indianapolis, Daniel Jones, and then Anthony Richardson, who I don't believe in or trust. Another. AFC West, to me, is still going to be the Chiefs. Broncos, I can see them improving, especially with Bo Nix second year, Sean Payton. But how much are they going to improve offensively? That's the question mark in Denver. Defensively, they're going to be hellacious. We know Patrick Surtain, the reigning defensive player of the year. And I think that defense is going to be stellar. What you get out of Bo Nix year 2, to me, I think you're going to get enough, but he's going to have to do more than enough if they're going to have any success in the postseason. The Chiefs are the Chiefs. Until they lose the division, how could you not pick against Mahomes and Andy Reid as far as just winning another division? Argue with me. I mean, the Chiefs are still the Chiefs, especially if number 15 is going to suit up for all 17 games. Chargers, they are so up and down. Just when you think that you could believe, they just pull the rug out from under you. And this goes back decades with this franchise. I'm not a big fan of Jim Harbaugh, no offense, Cole, although I think he's an excellent coach. I cannot dispute that any way, shape, form possible. But the Chargers always seem to disappoint. And look at last year. They go into Houston, and they were down to half with Justin Herbert, 5 interceptions. This guy's supposed to be one of the top quarterbacks in the sport. And I'm not saying top 5, but let's say top 10. He's shown you nothing. And, yeah, he could beat up on the Raiders. He could beat up on Jacksonville. He could beat up on Tennessee. He could beat up on Cleveland. He could beat up on the Jets. He could beat up on the New England Patriots of the world. And when they play the NFC, he could beat up on the Saints, the Panthers, the Giants, you name it. But until he goes mano a mano with these top quarterbacks, they're not going to get out of the division, I don't think. Could they be a playoff team? They could. They were last year. But I don't believe in them either. But I think they'll have good years. The Raiders, on the other hand, I think they could be, as we'll talk about a little bit more, they may shock people. Does that mean they're going to be a playoff team? No. But with a new coach, Pete Carroll, new culture, Geno Smith, as they reunite, and Geno Smith is competent. He's not spectacular. He's steady. Steady doesn't win you Super Bowls, and with Max Crosby, and you know he's going to wreck games. I know the secondary you can't pick out of a lineup, but they could surprise people. And Aston Genty could be a guy that could eat the clock, move the chains. You need a guy like that in the fourth quarter if a game is close. Who knows? NFC, I mean, the Eagles, what more can you say? They're the defending champs. They're loaded. What can I add? Can they have a down year? Of course they can, but we talked about that hangover. To me, they're the class of the NFC as of right now, and they're the class of that division. I don't think the Commanders – here's the thing about the Commanders that I would proceed with caution. They had a big year last year, came out of nowhere. Jaden Daniels went on the whole 9. Can they back that up this year? Because – not to say they're going to be a one-hit wonder and then they'll have a bad year this year and then they're going to have 5 bad years. But they came out of nowhere and they pulled games out of their rear end. That Hail Mary game against the Bears, the game against the Eagles where if Devontae Smith didn't drop a pass from Jalen Hurts, they would have won that game. And that was, I believe, week 17. And obviously they had their run through the playoffs, as we saw. I need to see them do it again. And there's going to be pressure on that team because that team is not a huntee anymore. They're not hunted. People know. And they brought in some reinforcements. Obviously, they re-signed Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel. Now, he has to stay healthy, but I need to see whether or not that they could do this 2 years in a row. And I'm not sitting here to say that they're not going to or they can. Oh, no way. No, but you showed me once. But if you really want me to believe, I need to see you do it this year. They were 12-5 last year. So if they're 10-7, make it to the playoffs, and let's say losing a wild card, all right, fine. Things didn't break right. Things broke right for them last year. Now, if they're going to take it to a next step, let me see them be 12-5 again this year. I'll give you 11-6. Anything less than 11-6, even if it's 10-7 to make the playoffs, if they make the playoffs, all right, fine. But the Giants, I think they're going to improve this year, but that schedule early on is scary for this reason. If Russell Wilson plays fairly well, but they lose, then you know they're going to go to Jackson Dart, maybe sooner than you think. And if I'm a Giant fan, I would only hope to split these first 2 games, try to get the Dallas game more particular, because you know Washington, they're going to try to come out firing, etc. So you can split those first 2 games, and then you'll see where you're at prior to Kansas City and the Chiefs and the Chargers. So I think if they tread water, they could be a surprise. Could be. Now, will they? If they're 0-4 or 1-3, then you could already see the trajectory going towards Jackson Dart. I think their defense is stout. I think that they could wreck games. Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, Kevon Thibodeau. I mean, they have a Dexter Lawrence. They have a front 7 that's going to scare the hell out of any quarterback. But are they going to be able to put up points? That's going to be the key thing. And the other thing is that they don't have a big-time offensive player. You know, the Wendell Robinsons and the, Tyrone Taylor. He's a good back, but is he a guy that, defensive coordinator is going to be shaking in their boots over? I understand Malik Neighbors. All right, I'll give you that. He is the one big player. But they're going to try to double team him and have other guys beat you. And I know Neighbors is a freak. I get that. But teams who are smart enough and have good defensive personnel, they're going to do whatever it takes to try to take him out of games and have the other players beat him. And that's it. And then up the rear I think I covered everybody, right? Commanders, Giants, and then the Cowboys. Cowboys can be either 10-7 or 7-10. That's how I look at it. because Dak Prescott in the regular season, he has put up good numbers. And he has CeeDee Lamb. And I know they don't have much of a running game. And the Jake Fergusons of the world. And the defense is okay. I understand no Micah Parsons, but that's why 7-10, 10-7. I don't expect a big year out of them. So they're either going to be a fringe wildcard team or they're just going to be out of the picture altogether. NFC North, obviously the Bears, I think they're the class of that division for everything I explained earlier. Packers, similar. I got to see them beat a big team. I have trust in them. I do like Jordan Love, and we know Micah Parsons is an excellent pass rusher, and they have young wide receivers there in Green Bay. So the Christian Watsons of the world, I mean, they have talent, but I don't trust them. And their head coach at big spots he's a little dicey. Think back to that game, the NFC Championship game, and this is going back a ways, I understand, but at 31-23, first and goal, and they were actually inside the 5. And what does he do? He kicks a field goal to make it 31-26. You got Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback. How did you not try to go for it there? What does the field goal get you? Get you nothing. All right, so now you get an 8-point lead, cut to 5. Well, you still need a touchdown. I understand at that point you'll take it to win the game, but yeah, and you would think you would grow from that years later, but I don't know. And a lot of these coaches, you could say they're dicey. And funny enough, when I talk about the Ravens, I'm all over the map. Let me get back to that. And I'm going to get to them in a second as far as when I get to my Super Bowl pick. So then you have the Vikings, J.J. McCarthy. I don't know. They're going to be a middle-of-the-pack team. They are good, but to me, it's all going to be predicated on what McCarthy does. And we understand the coach, Kevin O'Connell's a quarterback guru. I'm sure he's going to get a lot out of him. Look, he got a lot out of Sam Darnold last year, but at least Sam Darnold bounced around and has gotten experience as a starting quarterback. Jets, Carolina, San Francisco, and he backed up Purdy a little bit, I guess, late in the season. But you're going in with technically a rookie. And even at Michigan, I understand national champ, took him there, etc. Can't knock it. But this is the NFL. It's a whole different bowl of wax. So that's why I'd be a little skeptical about McCarthy, no matter how many reps and how much time he's been in the film room, etc. But no, when it's game day and you get that first hit out of your belt or out of your system, I like to see who's going to be made of then. But until we get to see that, and he's going to see it, obviously, come Sunday, I got to see it. And then lastly, you have the Bears. You would think there's going to be improvement. How big of an improvement? That remains to be seen. Let's see what Ben Johnson's going to do here with Caleb Williams. Hopefully he gets the ball out of his hands a lot faster because, as you know, he got sacked 68 times. It was the most, I believe, in history in one season in NFL history. And Caleb Williams, he's got weapons now. Roma Dunze from the draft, as you know, a couple of years ago, and he's got a plethora of receivers, the DJ Moores. We get it. But now he's going to have to really step up and see whether or not that they could at least get to maybe 8 wins, 9 wins, and who knows, maybe even a threat there for the playoffs in the NFC. The NFC South, I mean, this is one where this is arguably not the worst division. It is the worst division. I think the class of Tampa Bay, Baker Mayfield's found a home. Todd Bowles, you don't like his clock management. He scares you. But there's no other team that's going to touch him in that division. And that even includes the Falcons. Now, Michael Penix Jr., I like him. I think he's a great thrower of the football. But now with Kirk Cousins as the backup, they do have a very good backup. But your head coach is Raheem Morris. And he's a guy that, forget about even a big spot. It could be in the first quarter, and he'll throw a challenge flag on a play that is a 3-yard pass play that he feels that it was a drop. He scares me. Atlanta does have offensive talent, although Kyle Pitts has been I hate to say it, as Kismet is barking back there. Kyle Pitts has been a disappointment coming out of college. He should have been a guy that had a lot better. And I still have the banner. I mean, what am I doing here? I'm going through divisions. Goes to show you where my head is at here. Here we go. Break down the divisions. So Atlanta, how I look at it is that they have talent. Defensively, they're going to be Swiss cheese, but I think they'll be a middling team. As far as New Orleans, Tyler Shuck, forget about it. Carolina, I think, will be better, but they're still a couple years away. So there really isn't much to unpack there. And as far as the NFC West goes, I think the Niners could have a big year. Do I think they will? I think that remains to be seen. And a lot of it is predicated on Christian McCaffrey because, and I understand that they just recently got reinforcements there at the position. But Brock Purdy, who got his bag, and they don't, other than George Kittle, Jawan Jennings, who was griping about a contract, Brandon Ayuk, who I understand is going to come back, and I understand they restocked their defense on the draft. I'm still not 100% sold to see that they're going to be among the ranks with Philly and Detroit in the conference. I think they could. I don't think they will. I think they'll be anywhere between 9 and 12 wins, not the 13, 14 win team that we've seen here last year notwithstanding. And then you have the Rams, who, as we all know, Bio, you know more than anybody, the health of Matthew Stafford's back. Now he's going to play. Everything seems to be copacetic, but we all know 36, 37 years of age. If he takes one big hit, who knows? I do like their team. We know that Sean McVay is an excellent coach. Their defense that they built through the draft here is going to be formidable. But we all know if you don't have the quarterback, you could have a long year. I think they'll be good, but I think they'll be in the running with the Niners in that 9 to 11. Maybe not 12, it could be a little bit too high if you're the Niners, between 9 and 11. The Rams were 10-7 last year, and the Seahawks were also 10-7. So I think it's going to be somewhere in that vicinity. Seahawks, Sam Darnold. No DK Metcalf. No Tyler Lockett. I get it. A new team, new money, new cast of characters. Kenneth Walker IV. You have JSN. I can't pronounce his name. Jackson Smith Najiba or Saxon Najiba. Yeah. To me, Seattle's one of those teams that are nondescript. You don't know if they're an offensive team. You don't know if they're a defensive team. You know they have a defensive coach, Mike McDonald, but I can't pinpoint them. So therefore, with them being nondescript, they could be 5-12, or maybe they could be 9-8. And I know they were 10-7 last year, but they had Geno Smith as a quarterback. And people say, well, come on, Jay, it was Geno Smith. Well, do you think he's a lot better than Sam Darnold? Even if he's not a lot better, they're probably comparable. And Darnold just had the 1 year. So it's almost as if, all right, you had a great year last year, similar to the Commanders on a whole. Let me see you do that again this year. And to do it with less weapons. He doesn't have Justin Jefferson. He doesn't have Jordan Addison. He doesn't have Aaron Jones, the running back. And Kenneth Walker's a nice running back, but is he Sean Alexander? Is he Marshawn Lynch? Is he Kurt Warner from many, many moons ago? Look him up in the early 80s with the Seahawks. I think not. And then you have the Cardinals, who I don't want to say they're nondescript in their own right, because they do have Kyler Murray. They do have Marvin Harrison. They do have Trey McBride. They do have an offensive identity. Defensively, all right, maybe a little more desirable, that if you like, when it comes to the defensive side of the ball. And to think, Arizona was 6-4 in first place by themselves at the 11 game, by week 11, and then they bottomed out. I think they're going to be that type of team also. Middling, fringe. Everything will have to break right if they're going to be in the hunt for the NFC West. Other than that, though, I don't see much. And that's how I look at these divisions. And remember, last year in the NFL, you had more than a third, and that's 32 teams. So you had what? At least 11 teams, if I pull up the standings from last year, have double-digit losses. So there was a big disparity. You know, it's not as if you had a lot of teams that were at 500 or a lot of teams that were in the mix for playoffs. No, you had a lot of teams that were out of it by the time you got to Halloween. So you kind of wonder whether or not you may get the same here, because last year was an abominable year for the NFL. I understand not every NFL regular season is going to be all that, whatever. And their postseason had some games, but I mean, look at the Super Bowl. Super Bowl was done at the half, 27-0 or 20-0, whatever it was. So there I go, railing against the NFL. All right, so let me get to a couple of these comments, and I'll go through my surprise disappointments here. Let's see where I pick up where I left off. I'll try to speed through these a little bit quicker as we're now an hour and 25 in. All right, I know John said this, driving the people out. Yep. What else? Yeah, brouhaha. Wait, I went too far back, I think. Tickets, pickleball. Yep. Brent. Oh, the platforms, yes. Hey, Val wants to throw in the Valkyries. They beat the Liberty, by the way, last night. For those WNBA fans, John. I had it highlighted, but I think when I switched out. All right, here we go. Hey, Cole, no pushing. All right, I'm getting close. Verlander, Cole. Yeah, here we go. All right, ready? Let's go right through it. Tigers, Mets about to start. Beat the brakes off the Tigers. They certainly did. Would have had 22 runs in the last two games. Soto's been on a tear. And real quick, can I just say this about Juan Soto? When it's all said and done, despite the fact that he's batting 257, he's hit a ton here recently, the guy's going to put up, and this is what you want to call maybe a down year for Soto. When it's all said and done, he's going to put up 40 and 100. He's going to eclipse his all-time record for seasons or home runs in a year, which he did last year, 41. He already has 37. And he's at, 91 or 92 RBIs. His career high, I think, was 107 last year. He's going to put up better power numbers than he did in a Yankee uniform. Now, he's got to do it in October because that's where he's going to really earn his money. But for everybody thinking, oh, Juan Soto this, Juan Soto that, he's not Juan Solo anymore. All right. And yes, James Meth. That's right. That's the last comment I think we were on. Oh, no, it was Brent. Listen, I'm all over the map, people. My apologies. Brent, Fish. Yeah, this has to be it right here. Top secret. All right, the motor broke down. All right, with the fishing, of course. Mets giving up too many runs, 9th and only pitch has to tie it up. I agree with you there. Nolan McLean, 4-0 now as a starter. Winner in his first 4 starts there, John. But I agree with you. You have Kodai Senga, who scares me. Clay Holmes, same. David Peterson, good. And I can't expect these rookies to carry us through October. But if they have to do so, so be it. Brent, not a lot of things I take seriously in life. Family, making money, Michigan football. Fish. Hey, that is Cole right there in a nutshell. Gotta love it. Brent, last year sleeping in my truck and serving ramen noodles. Well, yeah, I hear that. And he's turned into a big-time profession. I've heard you mention about Jay. Yep. Absolutely. Let's see. Brent's sleeping in a truck. Do the things you love, and it's not work. That's why I'm here, people. Brent, I agree with you. Just run old folks home COVID. Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to do, too. I'm trying to follow Cole's footsteps here. Sorry, John. I'm a tire kicker now. Baseball. No. All right. Brent Soto. Oh, hang on. Beat them 2 days. They hit, what do you have? 6 RBIs. Put up 10 and 12, as we know. I know I'm just kind of rummaging through these. Mets going to beat an egg. No, I know. That's typical Mets. Well, hang on. No, we don't want breakdowns of the division. Hey, this is what we want. If they even start the Tigers, Mets get. Oh, well, yeah. I can see that, Cole. They should be able to get into the game before the rain. Yeah. It's supposed to rain there. If it's not raining already, I know the game's on the way, or it should be. It's 1:30. Many, many changes since the big changes. I appreciate that. And that's what I'm trying to do. Rebound. And make sure I continue to march on forward with this endeavor. Yes, we're forecasted for rain. Oh, 240. Wow, that's pretty good there, Brent. Eastern Ontario. James. See. Gordie Howe. Yep. All right. Oh, I was going to say that's all the comments. All right. It's going to be 1:30. I know I'm silent here because I'm trying to read your comment. I know our host can't stand it, but Lamar Jackson and Henry are on a mission. No, listen, Brent, I cannot disagree with you. Jai! My apologies if I didn't introduced you earlier. It's going to have a Gander defense playing offensive play plus in a week wide open division. They'll win the division. Oh, you're going on a limb. See, my thing is I got to see Sam Darnold do it 2 years in a row. Yeah, and that defense. Yeah, I know they got a bunch of guys on there that they're dogs, but they're not. And not to say you have to have standout All-Pro or Pro Bowl defensive players, but yeah, I don't know. To me, it's all on Darnold. If Lamar can make better decisions, I'll turn the ball over. It'll be tough to beat. He needs to get past those. I agree there, John, 1,000%. Hey, Jai, not sure about the vision, but spot on your breakdown. Yeah, Jai's good. Jai has a podcast in its own right. If you haven't, Jai, posted in the chat room, please do so. Agree, John. I think he's ready to turn that corner. Put Manai in a pen and sit Senga. Manai could end up being a fourth starter. That's the thing. Put him in the pen. Yeah, you know what? That's not a bad idea to James, only because he just came back from injury. So why not? First and foremost, yeah, the officiating is an atrocity, as we know at times. Brent, no problem. I appreciate you stopping by as always. Thank you so much. All right, so now with that, and that's the last comment there, so I'm all caught up. Breakdown of divisions. Now let's get to surprises and disappointments. My surprises. Where's the banner? Here we go. And I got one in each conference, and I'll try to go through this as quick as possible. If you heard me talk about the Raiders, and I know this is very risky, but Pete Carroll, who likes to run his camps similar to a country club, and the players are loving that. The real nice with Geno Smith, as I mentioned. Ashton Genty, he is going to be a tremendous focal point of this offense because they know that in the fourth quarter of these games where you got to move the chains and you need to convert a 4th and 1 or 4th and goal or 4th and inches, they're going to hand the rock to him. And he's going to try to punish the line of scrimmage and get through. Of course, Max Crosby. I know the secondary a bit dicey. And the Raiders' schedule is not terrible. The Raiders' schedule, actually, they play the AFC South. Let me pull that up real quick. Quick. Raiders, here we go. The Raiders' schedule, as we know, they open up at New England, not terrible. Home the Chargers. Remember, they're going to Sao Paulo. All right, they go to Washington, not easy, but then they host the Bears, at the Colts, Titans at home, Kansas City, which is a norm every year, twice a year, Jacksonville, at Denver, as they know, home to the Cowboys, the Browns. Then later on, they play the Giants. I mean, this is and when I mean as a surprise, could they be in the hunt? And I'm not saying in the hunt where they're 3 games behind where you see the graphic, which is a joke. Could they be a game or so behind? Oh, I say it not about a game or so. Could they be a game behind heading into week 14, where that's going to be a last stretch of games? Why not? The coach, the quarterback, again, not spectacular, Geno Smith. I think the Raiders, and they finally need some good fortune there out in the desert. That is my surprise team, number 1. My other surprise team in the NFC, I was going to say the Giants, but only because of their early schedule. I'm going to say the Bears. Now, Ben Johnson, he's going to have to command that whole room. Yes, he could tinker with that offense all he wants and bring the Lion offense to the Windy City, but he's not bringing Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I get it. I gave you a little bit of the cast of characters before, but I feel that the Bears, if they're going to take a step similar to the Raiders, I'm not saying they're going to win a division. I'm not saying they're going to be entrenched in the wild card hunt, but if Caleb Williams and how that offense could fire behind a lightning quick strike approach and to use Caleb Williams the way they did similar to Jared Goff, get the ball out of his hands, make sure he tries to get quick strikes, etc., I think they'll have a big year. Now, again, I think it's going to be similar to the Raiders where they could be on the fringe. I don't think it's going to be anything more than that, but I like the Bears this year. I think they could be a surprise. I understand in a lot of people's eyes, oh, how's that a surprise, Jay Reels? You would think that second year he's going to improve, he's going to be better. Well, if that's the case, if it's going to be a slam dunk automatic, then Jaden Daniels is going to a Super Bowl. And I'm not saying that Caleb Williams is going to be exponentially better, but with the quarterback, I remember Matt Eberflus is a defensive mind, and obviously does not have any of the chops that Ben Johnson's going to have when it comes to drawing up an offensive system, etc. So those are my surprises. My disappointments, I know I kind of touched on this, so I'm tipping my hand. I got to pick in the AFC Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence, if he doesn't come close to what he was supposed to be coming out of college this year, I'm not trying to say he's got to be all pro or anything like that, but come on, they got to go back to where they were a few years ago. And Liam Cohen, let's see what influence you're going to have on him when it comes to week in and week out. They play in a weak division, number one, and their schedule isn't that bad either. But because I think they play the NFC South. So that means Carolina, New Orleans, etc. So if you're Jacksonville, if you cannot have a big year this year with that schedule and with the bad taste that you're trying to get out of your mouth, having Doug Peterson fired and regressing big time, that if they don't come flying out of the gate, or let's just say they're 4-6, and I can see that. That's why I look at them as a disappointment, because they should be able to turn it around this year. And if they don't, maybe it's more of an indictment on the quarterback than it is the coaching. So keep that in mind. And then the other one's going to be Atlanta. I mean, think about this if you're a Falcon fan. Last year, they swept the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the regular season and had the inside track on winning a division based on them just having a tiebreaker. And at one point last year, they were 6-3 until they fell apart down the stretch. They lost in Washington in an inexplicable game. They lost all these games. And I understand Michael Penix was the quarterback then, but Penix didn't play bad in that game against the Commanders. But it's a situation where even with Penix and your head coach Raheem Morris, as I talked about, if they are 6-11 or 7-10, and I think they're over on the number 7.5, which is a joke, but Atlanta, I look at them as a disappointment because they were that close to making the playoffs last year, and they spit the bit, and now people are going to think, well, maybe they'll go up against Tampa Bay, and maybe they will before it's all said and done, but I'm going to look at them as taking a step back this year, and I see them not making any big strides. Although I'm rooting for Penix, hope he has a big year. I understand Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, and I get it, Kyle Pitts, who's been a disappointment, and Drake London. They have a very good offense. But I don't see it. So that's why I look at them as a disappointment. Now, here we go. My over on the win totals. Ugh, this is going to be tricky. I'm not a gambling man, as you know, but with the over-unders, Vegas puts out their win totals for the year. You're either going to pick over or under. And as I say every time this year, my over on the win totals, if you choose these teams and you win, I know you're not going to send me a check. And if they lose, if you're going to come crying at me, I'm going to be like, hey, this is just for fun. I'm putting $0, not 1 red cent, on betting when it comes to these over on the win totals. And the thing is, I've already picked 5. I got one more to pick, which I want to do live on the spot. So I did that on purpose. Here are your overs. Tampa 9.5 for everything that I explained. I understand the head coach scares you, but they have been together for a few years now. They're cohesive. They are the class of that division. Their number's 9.5. You mean to tell me they can't win 10? They got to go 10-7, which they've done. I think 2 years ago they were 9-8, and last year 10-7. They got to crack 10. They'll beat up on the Saints. All right, they may split with the Falcons, and maybe they'll do so with the Panthers. They may be a surprise because division games are always a toss-up. But let's say they go 5-1. You mean to tell me out of the last remaining 11 games they can't go 5-6? That's why I like Tampa as an over. Baltimore, and I hate to do this, but I think they're going to have a monster year. They're probably going to win 13, maybe 14 games. But I'm going to tip this off right now. They're not going to the Super Bowl in my eyes, and not because it's a hater pick or anti-Raven or even a reverse jinx for that matter by picking them to win more than 11.5. I don't trust the head coach. I don't. Because that team is undisciplined. When things start to go awry, John Harbaugh is like a deer in headlights sometimes. All you got to do is look at the game 2 years ago in the championship game where Lamar Jackson's slamming his helmet and he has that stupid look on his face with his eyes. And John Harbaugh, he tries to think that he's invented football half the time when you watch him in these press conferences. And not only that, but they have players that become unhinged in big spots where they want to celebrate, they want to do this, they want to do that. Personal fouls. Even guys like Kyle Van Noy, 2 years ago, I get it, getting personal fouls for unnecessary roughness. And that's all in the coaching. And I don't want to hear, oh, he won a Super Bowl back in Super Bowl 47 that year in 2012. All right, fine. So what? All right, he has that on his resume, respect, but what have you done for me lately? And to me, this is my coach, Mike Tomlin, which I didn't talk about in my preview. My coach, but it has been now going on, count them, 17 years since he's won a Super Bowl and almost a decade since he won a playoff game. But again, yeah, you could be 9-8 and win all these over 500. I get that, and I'll get to them in a second. But that doesn't amount to, well, he's won a Super Bowl. Yeah, he has the experience of getting to a Super Bowl, and fine. Granted, it was 100 years ago, but what have you done for me lately? That's John Harbaugh. And to me, he's regressed as a coach as much as and he breaks out the pom-poms too much for Lamar Jackson, which I get it. He's an MVP, and much respect to Lamar. But when we grade these quarterbacks, eye test, he's not an apologist. He's just going to say, well, hey, not everybody can win every year. Hey, he made the plays he had to do. Hey. And I understand he's not going to throw him under the bus, but you can't say, you know what? Lamar's this close. You know what? Yeah, Lamar did have his fumble and interception in the first half of the game against Buffalo, but you know what? He did bring us this close to tying the game. He's not going to give you the truth. He's just going to break out the pom-poms all the time, which I can't stand. But with Baltimore, to go back to that, 11.5, I think I have a big year, but we all know, as I've said on the intro of my podcast, if you haven't heard the podcast, tomorrow coming at you, and earlier, I might add, it'll be its normal high noon to 12:30 time frame. He could put up all the big numbers in October, November, and December, but let me see it when it really counts in January. And Lamar Jackson has not done that. But in the regular season, he's going to put up points and numbers and wins, and he's going to win more than 11.5. And Cole, is for you, Lions 10.5. You mean to tell me 11 games? That's what he's got to win? They won 15 last year. So even if they regressed and won 11, I win the bet. And I know their schedule is dangerously tough. It is a gauntlet, one of the toughest in the sport, and I'll read it real quick. So you may say, well, Jay Reels, that's going out on a limb. All right, well, you know what? I have respect for the Lions and what they've done. Regular season, postseason to an extent too. Here we go. At Packers, Bears, at Ravens, and that is going to be a big test. Because if you remember 2 years ago, the Lions went into Baltimore, I think like week 9, and they got their doors blown off, 38-6. If I'm Dan Campbell, I would show the tape the week before that game, which is week 3, and that is a Monday night game. I would show them the tape because a lot of the players are still on that team. I'd show them that tape. Browns, at Bengals, not an easy game. At Chiefs, Bucks, and they beat the Chiefs in a home opener 2 years ago, if you remember. Home opener for the Chiefs. Buccaneers, Vikings, at Commanders, at Eagles, Giants, Packers, Cowboys, at Rams, Steelers, at Vikings and Bears on the road where division games aren't a shoo-in. It is a tough schedule, but I think they got 11 wins in them. Now, as far as my unders, the first one that comes to mind, the Atlanta Falcons, for everything I just mentioned. 7.5. I think last year they won 8. They won 8-9. They could probably win 8, but Michael Penix, he's probably going to have some bumps and bruises. They may go to Kirk Cousins, and he may pull out a couple of games, but then you already know Kirk Cousins is going to give those games back. And I got no ill will to the Falcons. I hope they have a good year. Why not? They still have the visions of 28-3 dancing in their head from the Super Bowl against New England. So I got nothing against them, but 7.5 is their number. I'm picking them as an under. And who in Vegas picked New England as 8.5? And yes, their schedule is pretty easy. It is. But Drake May year 2, Mike Vrabel, all due respect as a coach, I'm sure he's going to come up with some good defensive schemes. Okay, fine. But they're going to win 9 games this year? What did they win last year? I get it under Gerard Mayo. But even if they won 4, and I think they were 4-13, they're going to have a 5-game leap this year? I think if a Patriot fan said to you right now, or if you said to them that you're going to double your win total from last year, they'd say, I had time for it. So that means now Drake May is going to have to take the leap next year. All of a sudden, they're going to go from 4 to 9. And Drake May, who's shown signs, and I think he's going to be a good quarterback, but now he's going to take that big leap. I don't see it. So New England 8.5 is an under. And then finally, as I'm going to choose my final one here, live and in living color, because I had problems with this. Because a lot of these over on the win totals, they're right in the middle. Yes, you could pick the Saints 4.5. I mean, are you going to do that? I'm not. Are you going to pick the Browns 4.5 over under and an under total? I'm not. But there's a lot that are somewhere hovering around the middle. Not picking the Chargers. I thought about the Dolphins as an under, but no, I stood away from that. Who do I choose here? You know what? I know this is almost like taking candy away from a baby, but what the hell? I know they're one of the dregs. This is bad. Should I do this? No, I should not. Listen, time's ticking. It's 1:46. I still got to get to the Steelers and a couple other things. What the hell? I'm going to do it. You ready for this? Their number is 5.5, and I know that the coach hasn't really distinguished himself. And I mean, you got a rookie quarterback. I'm picking the Titans 5.5 as an under. I mean, is that bad? I think it is, right? I shouldn't have done that. It's almost like, oh, Jay Reels, how could you do that? Should have tried to pick the team that was like 9 or 10 and pick them as an under. Like people would think that the Chiefs are going to be under 12 this year, or it's 11.5 is the number. But no, that's it. So here's what we got. Overs, Tampa 9.5, Baltimore 11.5, Detroit 10.5, unders, Atlanta 7.5, New England 8.5, Tennessee 5.5. My Pittsburgh Steelers preview. All their offseason moves, we know who they are. Do I need to go through them? All right, I guess so, but real quick. Now, I don't like that Derek Harmon's hurt right now because, and that's not his fault, but he's a guy that would be great alongside Cameron Hayward. I'm sure it's going to happen at some point, but a knee injury on the shelf. But anyway, Darius Slay, Jonnu Smith, DK Metcalf, Jalen Ramsey, Kenneth Gainwell to a lesser degree. They re-signed Jalen Warren 2 years, which I thought was good. He's very underrated. Aaron Rodgers, of course. Now, to me, it's all going to be predicated on the young offensive line, the Mason McCormicks, the Broderick Joneses, the Zach Frazier's of the world to keep Aaron Rodgers upright. If they do so, they could have a big year. A big year for the Steelers. 12-5, not 13-4. I think 12-5 is their ceiling. Their floor is 9-8 because Mike Tomlin always wins over 500. He always has 500 or better seasons. Excuse me. I'm going to say this. Now, this isn't a situation where a moral victory, hey, all right, fine. They'll make it to the postseason. With 12-5, hopefully it's a 5 seed, could be 6. 6 means you could be going to Buffalo. 6 means you could be going to, quite possibly, Baltimore. Same could be said if they're a 7 seed at 12-5, which is unlikely. But how I look at it is, I think they'll win a playoff game this year. They'll have a better chance of winning a playoff game if they're a 5 seed, meaning they'll have to go to Houston, than they would if they have to go to Baltimore, as we saw last year, or Buffalo, as we saw 2 years prior. Now, I'm going to go on a limb and say they're going to win a playoff game. But I think their ceiling is the division round because of A. Rodgers. And the one thing about Rodgers, you can't forget, he's a guy that likes to shrug his shoulders, a guy that has bad body language if things aren't going his way. And the Steelers' schedule to start off the year is favorable. In fact, they could be 4-1 and have an early bye, which I can't stand. Ugh. They had an early bye last year. They couldn't give an early bye, later bye this year. Their schedule is not bad. They start off at the Jets. They have Seattle coming into their building week 2. Then in week 3, they have to go to New England. After that, they play Minnesota, but in Berlin. No, in Dublin. My apologies. They're playing in Ireland. Then they have their bye week because they elected to choose it after the trip to Europe. Browns at Bengals, Packers, where you know Aaron Rodgers is going to be up for. So right there, you're looking at those first 6 games. Oh, and then you have the Colts after that. So count them 1, 2, 3, 4. Those 8 games up to the Colts, they could be 6-2. And remember, last year they got to a 10-3 start before they imploded, and they lost their last 5 games, including the playoff game. So the schedule's favorable. Late, it's brutal. Here's how they got to close out their year, and this is their last 6 games. Home to Buffalo, at Baltimore, Dolphins, okay, at Detroit, at Cleveland, which is not going to be easy. They lost in Cleveland last year on a Thursday night, I might add. And then home to the Ravens. So, yeah, they better jump out in front, similar to what they did last year, in order for them to be that quote-unquote 12-5 team. Because if they don't, if they're not 6-2, let's say they're 5-3. All right, fine, not bad. But that last stretch, which starts off at Chargers, Bengals, Bears before they go to Buffalo, or before Buffalo comes to Pittsburgh. So I see them going divisional round, but that's it. Could they go beyond that? I think they can, but it's going to have to break right in order for them to do so. And then my Super Bowl pick. Oh, no, wait. Let me get to my knockout pick. And, of course, one last thing. The Steelers team is an older team. Injuries. You got to think about that. T.J. Watt in his 30s. Just turned 30, I believe. Jalen Ramsey, 30s. Cameron Hayward. So you got to keep that in mind. And the quarterback, as we all know, is the oldest player in the league, in the sport. My knockout pick, and this one's an easy one. Here I am. I picked Tennessee as an under. And where does Tennessee go to? And remember, this is no point spread. It's just for the team to win. Not a situation where, if they win but lose the point spread, then I'm out. No, that is not the case. Denver is my knockout pick this week, which I'm sure a lot of people are picking Denver to win week 1 as they're going to host Tennessee. Cam Ward in his first game and that mile high. I don't think so. And then my Super Bowl pick. I hate to say this. If you watch the live stream on Monday, let me see if I got any comments. I'm sure I got a few because I'm going to close out with those. Oh, I got one comment. All right. Cole with a Tigers made it through first inning, no runs. Right now, it's got to be, third inning, I would think. But my Super Bowl pick, you ready? Here we go, people. Last but not least, and here I am. I'm behind. Look, I had my over-unders. Yeah, my knockout pick. Oh, yeah, you already know that. I hate to do this, but last year, I picked this team to win the Super Bowl, but I'm not picking them to win this year. I'm going back to the well one more time, and the third time's not going to be the charm. I don't care if these teams get to the championship game in their respective conferences and lose in quadruple overtime. I will not look at them this time next year and think, well, what is going to be my Super Bowl pick? I'm going to pick the Lions over the Buffalo Bills. I think it'd be fascinating because the Bills haven't been there in 100 years and they have not won a Super Bowl, and the Lions have never been to a Super Bowl. So I think you'd have a lot of hoopla just surrounding that. I'm tired of the Chiefs. I'm even tired of the Eagles. If the Eagles go back to the Super Bowl, that's 3 and 4 years. And the Chiefs have made it the last 3 years. I don't want to see the Ravens. I cannot stand John Harbaugh's face. I don't want to see him for 2 weeks. No offense. Lamar Jackson, listen, I got mad respect for Lamar Jackson. His ability, he's humble, down to earth, God-fearing guy. Listen, how could you not like Lamar Jackson? Although, in big spots, he hasn't delivered. Buffalo, I'm not huge on Buffalo either because Sean McDermott could certainly make you scratch your head from time to time as well. But I think the Bills, with their experience, and it doesn't matter. They can have the AFC Championship game at home against Kansas City because, remember, they lost to them 2 years ago in the divisional round. But I don't know. I just think Kansas City is going to have to go through, and I get it that they're mentally tough, et cetera. But I think to get to a Super Bowl 4 straight years, that's similar to what the Bills did. And I could see this year being one where there's going to be frustration. There's going to be Rashee Rice is suspended. I know they have a surplus of players, but I think Buffalo's going to get to. I think they're going to be the one team that gets over the hump. And if they don't, they're never going to, as long as Patrick Mahomes is alive. Because the Chiefs, I understand. How could you bet against them? And I couldn't pick the Chiefs. I couldn't pick chalk. And I wanted to do something different, but I think the Lions are going to get there. Now, I don't know what's going to happen. Does Philly get the number 1 seed and then they get picked off? It's possible. I mean, look at Philadelphia. They made it to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Lost in the final seconds. The year after that, they were 10-1 and then spit the bit. Last year, I understand they didn't have Saquon Barkley the year before, but they had Saquon, and then boom, they made it to the Super Bowl. Can they get back to the Super Bowl? Absolutely. I don't think they will. I think the Lions will, and the Lions will win Super Bowl 60, which will be played out in Levi Stadium, Santa Clara, California. All right, let me check the comment here. Mets Tigers 1-1. Thanks, James D. I'm not going to get to any of those sports because I got to sign off here in the next couple of minutes. And I got to plug in my laptop, which my plug, of course, is over there. Because right now, let me just click on that. I got to be that. If I had to take a guess, ready? 14%. 15. That's what happens because I have the ring light plugged in. So therefore, I have to use that instead of the plug for the laptop. But that is my NFL preview, people. Did you need more? What did I miss? Did I miss out on anything? Was that more than enough? I understand we had the comments. We filled that up quite a bit. But that'll do it. Another episode just about in the books. Tomorrow, podcast pregame. We'll talk about what is on tap for the podcast, which I'm sure you could gather. But we'll talk about that. We'll see if the Mets can sweep the Tigers. That'd be good. It's more so for the Mets, not necessarily to get on Cole, because I got no ill will toward the Tigers. But baseball, weird situation in Houston yesterday with that pitch with Framber Valdez. He did that intentionally. I mean, this is body language, etc. You already know. And then U.S. Open, I'll talk about. College football schedule we'll look at. And I'll talk about the NFL schedule also tomorrow, kind of critique that, break that down, etc. Any last thoughts in the chat room before I say goodbye? Now's your chance to do so. Subscribe. If this is your first time on here, please, to the channel. I just made 700 subscribers, and I'm still at 700. So the more subscribers to get to 1,000, the little engine that could, this podcast, this live stream, etc. Latest edition of the podcast, is coming up tomorrow. And thank you all for stopping by, chiming in. Even Jai coming into the room. John, my former boss, my usual suspects who I admire, and I'm super grateful and thankful. Cole, James, Brent, Val, you know who you are. I don't think I missed anybody there, but that will do it. So with that being said, if you don't know, now you know. Sports in the blood and the DNA, as I like to say. Talking sports is birth, or talking NFL football, as you know. 2-hour preview. I mean, what more can I tell you? I understand some comments in between, but I will sign off for now. Tomorrow, catch me live again. We'll talk about anything and everything, not only the podcast pregame, but what else is going on, as I will deliver the latest then. Podcast at 12, as you know. And whether you do or do not know, this is what I love to do. Talking sports is birth. As long as I sit in front of this microphone and camera, I will do whatever it takes to bring the passion, fire, energy, fury with my thoughts, opinions, critiques, praise, analysis, feelings on anything and everything that happens on the diamond, ice, gridiron, hardwood, golf course, racetrack, tennis court, boxing ring, octagon, you name it. From my lips to yours, from my heart to your soul, from where I am to wherever you are. The J Reels live stream always comes live, correct, direct, and in full effect. And in the last couple of comments here, Val, I appreciate it. And John, I'll be in touch, man. I appreciate you stopping by. Yes. Great show. Good folks in the chat. Thanks all. Thank you, John. And as always, as I close out, until next time on the live stream and the podcast tomorrow, everybody on the flip, baby.